Welcome back, folks. Oklahoma Homesteader here. So I'm out doing my first mow for the season. It is April 17th, and I usually try to put off the first time I mow for the year as long as I can. A lot of times I go till like May 1st. And now we live in a real rural area, so honestly it doesn't even matter what our lawn looks like. But I usually try to go till May 1st. Today I came home and Maddox was out here mowing. Boy's trying to earn his keep. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and I'd had him stop because he knew that it's this time of year where all the tree seeds that have fallen from last year are now planted in the ground and they're growing. And as you know, a lot of you know or may remember that I grow trees from seed. It's just kind of a hobby. So I've done previous videos on collecting seeds from really anywhere, all over the place. And then I overwinter them or cold stratify them in my refrigerator over winter. They have to get a certain amount of chill hours and then they're ready to go. Well, one of the ways, there's two main ways I know they're ready to go. There's one, the acorns or whatever they are. It's typically the acorns first. They will start to get a crack in them and you can see the kind of meat inside, and there'll be a little tail, a little root coming out. The other way I know is because I'm gonna turn you around here. I'm gonna turn you around here and show you all these are pin oak trees coming up in my yard. So I've got a nice pin oak right there. And if you look across the yard, you can see some more bright green. That's an oak tree. That's actually two oaks, I think. Three oaks. Maybe just two. But they're coming up. Now these are all over my yard. I could probably stand in one spot right here and count 30 of them. Now if they're in a good spot where I don't mind them to grow, I just leave them. This is one from last year. Now that thing is probably 7 foot tall. I'm 6'1". It's about 7 foot tall. This was an acorn about this time last year. And that's about, I don't know, 30 feet from the mother pin oak there. Hey, perfect spot. So I just let it grow. Here's another one that grew from the middle. This is some pampas grass. And if you know anything about this, the middle of it kind of rots out or gets choked out. But it leaves all this stuff and it breaks down and it's nice and fertile. Well, the acorn got in there and look at that. That thing's about 3 foot tall. Now I don't know, I'm assuming some of that grass is probably a lot of shade. Once the green pampas grass from the edges grew up, it gets about 8-10 foot tall. So it probably put a lot of shade on that tree, but that was from last year as well. I'm just going to leave that one. Now these are only about 10-12 feet apart. They're, eventually down the road they may shade each other out a little bit, but that's all right. So let's go in the shop. We'll break out some Ziploc baggies full of acorns and walnuts and pecans and all kinds of stuff. Let's take a look and see how we're looking for getting these things planted. All right, everybody, we're here in the shop. It's actually the next day. Ran out of time. So, if I'm covered in dog hair, it's because it's shedding season with these Great Pyrenees. And I've been doing my best to keep up with it, getting their undercoat off. And I'm pretty well covered. I changed my shirt because it was covered. It looked like a wool sweater. It was crazy, but Anyway, back on the subject of these trees. So I showed you the trees in the yard. That's one signal that these things are ready to be planted and start growing. The other one is, I've already looked at some of these baggies. Let me turn you around here. These are all tree seeds. All those baggies and all these baggies. So let's grab one of these. This is a water oak. Let's walk over here. Okay, so let me switch hands here. So this is the other little signal. See that tail on the end? That little dude is wanting to find some dirt to plant itself in. And we're going to have some trees. So this is just in some, you can either do like peat moss or sawdust, or, I mean, really, you don't even need like a medium to keep it in. But I like to do something, this is cocoa fiber. I like to do that because it holds the moisture a little bit. So that's what all these bags were. So all those baggies you saw in the fridge there, they all have that cocoa fiber in there, and I think it helps hold the moisture in over the winter. Now you don't want too much moisture. I don't seal those Ziplocs. I seal them about halfway, leave the rest of it cracked, and that way, you know, it can vent, you know, it can get some airflow in there. If it dries out too much, I will add just a touch of water and I will zip it further closed. If it stays like it's staying too wet in there, I will open it all the way up. And then several times throughout the winter, I will, you know, seal the bag up and then kind of flop it all back and forth just to kind of keep it mixed up. That way nothing settles to the bottom, and it just seems to help a little bit. Probably not completely necessary, but so let's grab a couple of these bags and we'll go out to the high tunnel where I plant these and show you how you do it. Okay, so I'm in the high tunnel. Now you don't have to do this in a high tunnel. This can be done just outside. I do it in here because this is where I have these raised beds. If you haven't seen how I make these beds, go back in my videos, probably till last fall, and I do a detailed video on how to make these beds. I just think they're fantastic. They've worked out really, really well for me. So I do them in these beds, and the main reason is because it helps me keep them watered. That's just the main reason. They don't need a lot of space for their roots. You'll see in a minute here, but I will plant these about 2 inches apart in any direction, kind of in a grid, and we'll dig them up, you know, late fall, winter probably, as bare root trees. So when you go to dig these up, some of the roots are going to be tangled together, and that's fine. They can be handled at that point when they're dormant, and it won't hurt anything. So you'll get a year's growth from acorn to 1 year growth, however that big that is. That's going to vary by tree. And then you can, you know, plant them in the ground. You can give them away bare root. You can sell them bare root. You could pot them up, let them grow a few more seasons in a pot. You could plant them out in a grid in a field, like a tree farm, and then, you know, dig them up in the future when they're, you know, 2-3 inch diameter caliber, I guess is the appropriate term, and sell them for, you know, way more than you could when they're small. But anyway, I'm gonna set this tripod up and I'm gonna show you how I do this. All right, this is kind of hard. I don't have a full-size tripod, but I'm gonna start off with pin oaks. And you can see here, I've already got several that were actually the ones that I showed you that were in my yard. You can use a little screwdriver, loosen those up, and they'll pull right out of the ground and you can plant them. You can see these two, the day I did this, it was super hot out. The day I did this, well, looks like that one's got a root on it. I'm just gonna leave it in there. Yeah, that one doesn't look too great. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this one out too. Reason being is I have a whole bag of pin oaks. So man, yeah. So this could have been done. This could have been done a while ago. Look at the root on that thing. You can see it's cracked open. So I just plant these. I'm gonna move out here where you can see me a little bit better, but I'm gonna just loosen up all this soil just a little bit. Because when you plant these, now with that tail like that, I've got to kind of make a little bit of a hole to get that down into, right? But you don't need much. Man, this one's almost all the way cracked open, but you know, I don't see, yeah, see that one, looks like that one had some bugs in it. So that's no good. Throw that one out. I'll show you a little closer here in a minute of how I'm doing this, but you actually don't have to plant the acorn completely in the ground. You can see here, acorn, acorn, right? And the only reason I'm even making a hole at all is so that I can bury that root. Try to find another one with a big root on it. And you really just want to bury the acorn about halfway. You don't want it all the way under the ground. So this one hasn't, it's beginning to split, but not much. So this is actually probably better to plant, easier I should say. You're going to go about 2 inches away and just kind of place it down in there. Just kind of work it down into the soil. This one's got a root, so I'll dig a little hole there for that one, but get the cap off there. This one's got a little root, but that obviously wants to go down. So let me get some of these planted and I'll kind of show you a little bit better what I'm doing here. Okay, so I've got, in these two beds here, I've got about 275 rough count, different oaks, some pecan, and maybe 25 walnut. And then in a bed over here, I should have showed you that, I guess. In this bed here, I've probably got about 75 oaks, acorns. Those ones there are off the parade field at Fort Sill here in Oklahoma, Army post. And And then these here, let me turn you around. So these two beds here, like I said, most of these, they just set them. So you can see right here, there's a pecan, another pecan. These are just kind of set right in the ground. The pecan and the walnut, there was a few pecans sprouted, but not very many. But you can see how these are in there I actually did probably 3 to 4 inches. Might be a little bit hard to see. This one's a little easier to see. But you can see how these acorns are they're pretty much laying on the top. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna water these in, and it'll kind of lock the dirt around it. Let's start off over here. And if these are buried, just below the surface, that's okay. It'll be more like a squirrel buried it, just below the surface, as opposed to it just falling on the ground and being kind of buried in leaves. Totally fine. But I want to get these good and watered in. All right, so you can see I've got this watered in real well. Now I don't like to flood it, because you can see I've got little markers in each row is a different one. I've got water oak, I've got pin oak, I've got Fort Sill polo field, acorns and pecans, the artillery school, the parade field, the cemetery. Those acorns are huge, probably hard to see. I should have showed you some before I put them in the ground, but those are big old, I think they're live oaks, best I can tell. And then some from Oklahoma State University campus. And so anyway, you can kind of see how they're just laying in here. And I don't like to soak them down too much, because I want to keep them in rows. So there, and then this bed here, it is actually kind of maybe I just pushed them in a little deeper. I don't know. You can see the pecans here, a couple rows of pecans. So that's how I do oak, pecan, walnut, any kind of nut. This is how I do it. Now, people may have way better ways of doing it. I have no idea. But here in central Oklahoma, this is one way to do it. And I've been doing it for, I don't know, what, 4 or 5 years, honey? 4 or 5 years? Yeah, 3 or 4 years. Collecting acorns from kind of my favorite places to visit, or maybe meaningful places, stuff like that. And growing it from seed will be exact DNA replica of that mother tree. So, it's just kind of something neat to do. Give them away as gifts, or at the very least, just get trees planted in the world. That's never a bad thing, I don't think. So like I said, this is how I do trees that have more like a nut. I'll do a separate video, I think, on how I do trees that are from just like seed. Some of the seeds are teeny tiny, and some of them have to be like scratched. Some of them, even from what I've read, have to be like dipped in acid to kind of mock what would happen in nature with like birds, like a bird eating the seed, going through their stomach acid and pooping them out to be planted, right? So I don't know a whole lot about that. We'll do a separate video on that, but I just wanted to show I really needed to plant these acorns the most. And I'm going to figure out, I've got a different little idea of how to do the other seeds. So stay tuned for that video. But anyway, it's been a while since I made a video, so I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, guys. Well, if you stayed here to the end, you get a little bit of this bonus footage. I forgot to plan ahead and put this in the video, but I'm glad I remembered that it was probably about February, so a few months ago, and this is showing Maddox and I were digging up last year's acorns that had grown into little saplings. We had dug out the majority of these already, as you can tell probably, and then I realized, oh man, I should get some footage. So I busted out the phone and kind of caught the tail end of Maddox digging these out. You can see that the majority of them are already dug out and gone. I had planted a bunch. I had given away the vast majority of them to my neighbors and some friends. But you can see here Maddox pulling some of these out, and these are completely dormant, and that's the only reason you're able to handle these this way without damaging them. You can see in that shot right there, those trees that's about a foot long area, and there's what, 5 or 6 oak trees right there. So the soil was loosened up with a potato fork, and you could see those just pull right out. And then we heel them back in. Just dig a little hole, heel them in with some dirt or wood chips, or you could use anything that's going to keep them, hold the moisture in until you can pot them up or transplant them or give them away. Again, these are completely dormant, so there's really not, unless you just ripped the top portion of the tree off of the roots completely, that would be the only way you could damage these things. The roots, could be completely shaken off of dirt, even rinsed off into where there's absolutely no dirt on them, and it's not going to hurt them at all. But we don't really need to do that. So you can see how he's just grabbing that thing and pulling away. Now that's a pretty decent sized white oak there, and the roots are set deep. So, little digging around there. He gets it eventually. Now these could be dug up like this and kind of clumped together. If you see in the shot there, the top right, there are some smaller oaks that are kind of clumped together, and you could, tie some string around them or whatever to make it easier to give away. That's a walnut. I think we had 3 walnuts. That's 1 year's growth. They really put on some roots. Then you could also see here the piles of bare root oak trees. Like I said, you could put a rubber band around those or twisty tie or whatever, and it's easy to transport them. So that's what it looks like. Again, this is from a few months ago, and these are last year's acorns